You think you know what we're going to talk about.
But unfortunately, I fell down a damn rabbit hole and I've not gotten out yet.
Knife bros.
I literally Googled Sebastian Stan hands.
But just when you least expect it, we changed the game.
Well, yeah, because like usually in astrology, they would partner up air signs with fire signs.
All right, you can huggle.
Time travel stories, and
At the end of the day, only one thing matters. We decide.
Well, we should make it a topic. Unfortunately, I didn't take German in school. I took Spanish and I don't remember any of it.
Three Fates Decide podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Three Fates Decide podcast. My name's Mary, one of your hosts. I'm with my other two co-hosts, Sam and Liz. Say hi, ladies.
Hey.
hello.
Well, today we are going to be talking about a book trilogy that the three of us have all read, and we've probably, I don't know if you ladies seen the movies for these yet or not.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes. We are going to be talking about Suzanne Collins's The Hunger Games trilogy. I know. This trilogy, when I first read it, shortly after it was she started putting it out back in 2008, I was blown away because it's set in West Virginia, part of it is, and I live very close to West Virginia. So it's like very close to where I'm from. So it was kind of hit home a little harder for me.
Yeah, I think what kind of got me is that it is, the U.S. And obviously it's not called the U.S. It's called Pan Am. But
Mhm.
it's basically, it takes place in the future. And, but it's not like, what you would expect, the U.S. to become. And so I think I agree with you. I think maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, because it's like as you're reading it and they're describing these places, it's like, oh, that would have been this, or that would have been this place, or so it does hit a little closer to home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because for me, because District 12 is literally Appalachia or Appalachia, however you want to pronounce it. And I live in a part of it that's nestled right in the Appalachian Mountains, because the Appalachian Mountains run all the way up the eastern seaboard, pretty much that area.
Yeah.
And it's like everything she wrote about, I'm like, oh, I know, I could probably find that on a map if I really looked. Like, just the way she describes stuff is like,
Yeah. And then obviously the story is just
really good.
crazy. So if you have never read the books or watched the movies, basically once a year the districts sacrifice their children. So there's 13 districts in Pan Am, by the way, or 12. There was 13. There was a war, and
The 13th district was destroyed.
right. And as punishment to the other 12, and as a reminder of what would happen if another war broke out, once a year the districts have to put their children up for sacrifice. Basically, they pull names, one male, one female from each district at what's called a reaping.
Mm-hmm.
And those two kids get shipped off to an undisclosed location and fight to the death. And whoever wins that child's district gets a lot of food for the year. And unfortunately, a lot of the poorer districts, like District 12, which is where our main character Katniss Everdeen is from, is very, very poor. So they don't have as many winners. And yeah, that's basically what it's disgusting and terrible when you think about it. How old are they when they start going into the reaping? 13?
12.
12. Yeah, 12.
And
It's Primrose's
Or was it
Katniss' sister's first ever reaping, and she's
or was
12.
it 11? I forget. Was it 11 or
yeah, I
12?
don't. They were young though. Yeah, they're
They're very
young.
young.
And as you get older, the more times your name is in the bowl, and you can actually add your name more to get more food for like your family throughout the year. So, like, if you like, some of these kids have their names in there like 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's terrible. It really is. It's so terrible. And so Katniss wants to protect her little sister Primrose, and it's her first name or her first time at the reaping. Katniss made sure that her name wasn't in there multiple times, so her name is only in there once, and Primrose gets chosen, of course. And Katniss decides to volunteer to replace her in the Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
And then Katniss's male counterpart from District 12 that's also going is Peeta Mellark, who was in her grade in school, so like they knew each other. And Katniss always would think back to when her family was starving after her father died in the coal mill, that Peeta like burnt bread on purpose and threw it out to her, knowing that like his parents was going to tell him to like get rid of it. So like she like almost feels like she's in debt to him, and that's like a big plot, at least in the first book, is like how she wants to protect him because he was so nice to her.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the premise of the first book, right? I didn't miss anything.
No, I mean, she
Oh,
volunteers for her sister. She finds out that while they're in the Capitol training for the Hunger Games, she finds out that Pete is actually in love with her.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I was like, oh wait, I forgot that.
Yeah, she finds out that Peter's actually in love with her. She's got feelings for her longtime best friend Gale. So that was
Oh, Gale.
yeah, poor Gale. But then
Yeah.
they go to the arena, and then she allies with Rue, the one of the female tribute from District 11,
Mm-hmm.
because she reminds her of her sister.
Yep.
And then she gets killed. Poor Rue gets killed. Not by Katniss, mind you. Yeah.
Yeah. So while they're training, like, you know, obviously the good thing about the books is you definitely learn a lot more, but there's certain districts that have what they call career tributes,
Mm-hmm.
because they're from the richer um districts, so they're kind of like trained from the time they were born to be in the Hunger Games, and that's District 1, 2, and 4, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so when they're training, after like they spend some time training, kind of learning all this stuff, one thing you learn about Katniss is her and Gale, in order to help feed their families in District 12, they go outside of the line of the district and they hunt. So Katniss is really good with a bow and arrow. And so at the end of training, the tributes all have a limited time to show the game makers.
Yeah.
And Katniss went to go, show them bow and arrow, and she kind of like messed up. So they like, first of all, by the time she got there, because she was from District 12, they were kind of like ignoring her anyway. But once she like messed up, they really ignored her. So she wound up shooting an arrow at them, but they had like a roasted pig with a apple in its mouth, and she
Mhm.
shot through the apple. And they were like so impressed, they gave her the highest score out of everyone, so that ticked off the career tributes, and so they all teamed up to go after her.
Although, I can't remember if this was just in the movie or if this was actually a thing in the book, but the scoring that she got, it's potentially actually this may have been more in the book actually now that I think about it, where the scoring that, you know, in their assessment may actually not so much, it's like a double-edged sword. It's like on the one hand, it's an indicator of how strong a potential challenger that this kid is, which would encourage the betting and potential sponsors they'll get. But then on the other hand, it puts a target on your back saying, oh, we got to get rid of this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as you said, double-edged sword. Because you want sponsors, because if you get hurt or if you're hungry or thirsty or whatever, these sponsors will send gifts to you via parachute into the arena, and that kind of helps you survive. So unfortunately it is kind of Katniss versus the careers, and the first time she kind of or gets confronted by them, runs into them, whatever, she sees Peeta is with them. So she's all kinds of feeling betrayed. And they like chase her. She winds up climbing up a tree and they can't get to her. And so they decide to like camp out underneath that, and the only way she was able to get out of the tree was with oh my god, what are they called? The wasps.
Tracker jackers.
Thank you.
Yeah, the tracker jackers. That's what
Tracker jackers. Yeah.
But she got multiple stings herself from the tracker jackers.
But as a result of those tracker jackers, she killed the girl from District 2 and was able to get the one bow and arrow.
Yes.
That they had, that they put there for her, and she knew that, but she couldn't get to it on day 1. So, but then she was knocked out because the tracker jacker venom, like, it could obviously kill you or could cause like severe hallucinations and all that stuff. And that's when she teams up with Rue, because Rue saw everything that happened, and she basically treated Katniss while she was unconscious from the tracker jacker venom. And then
so saved Katniss's life.
Yeah. And then unfortunately died.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Poor Rue.
I know. So Katniss, she did their 3-finger salute.
Yeah, that was a District 12 thing, I believe.
It is. That's what District 12 does. But she did it for Rue.
But before she passed out, she did realize that Peeta wasn't really with the careers. He was actually trying to protect her by working with the careers. So, you know, kind of talking with Rue, you know, she kind of realized like that Peeta wasn't so bad, but she wanted to attack the careers. Peeta was missing. She didn't know where he was. She was able to kind of attack the careers like base camp or whatever. And then that's when Rue died. And then not long after, they made an announcement in the arena that if both tributes from your district are alive, both of you could win. So like you could team up together, which you don't normally do. It's every man for himself.
Right.
So Katniss then has to go and find Peeta. She finds him, and he's badly, badly injured.
Yes.
And has like a fever from infection and all that stuff, and it's not looking good for Peeta.
Yeah, he was pretty much near death.
Yeah.
At that when she found him.
Right.
And so I remember they made an announcement that the tributes had to come to the starting place, the cornucopia. I think it was a cornucopia at that point, wasn't it?
Yep.
Okay. If they go there, there'll be something that each team needs or each person needs. And Katniss knew it was going to be medicine to heal Peeta. But Peeta's like, it's a trap. Don't go.
Of course,
It was a trap.
Yeah.
Oh, well, of course it's a trap because it's the perfect excuse to get everybody that's left in the arena to gather in one location and try to knock each other off.
Exactly.
And if I recall in the book, it had like rained a lot, so like there really hadn't been any fighting or anything. So it almost, I guess, like, you know, you have to almost think of it as she's like in the book, it's Katniss's perspective, so she's thinking about what the most likely what like the crowd at home is seeing, like what the cameras are on and stuff like that. So like she's playing the part of like she's in love with Peeta also. It's like the star-crossed lovers thing. And meanwhile she's trying to like keep him alive, and then like, yeah, they call like this feast at the cornucopia, which is basically like, you know, come get the stuff that you really want so that we could have another battle. And Peeta's not having it, and they don't do this in the movie. In the movie, I think he was just asleep, but in the book, she actually like drugged him
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
Which he was not happy about.
No. Not at
And
all.
she did almost die. But she was saved by the guy from District 11 who only saved her because of Rue, because he knew that she was with Rue at one point.
And she protected Rue as much as she could.
Right.
Yeah.
But she was able to get the medicine, and Peeta recovered enough that they could then move on. And then the end of the game, and I thought they could have done so much better in the movie, because in the book it just sounded so scary, but they have what is called mutts. And in this case, they did kind of look like dogs, but in the books, when they say mutts, they just mean like they're genetically altered whatever.
They were actual dogs, but they had
They were dogs.
Of the
They had the eyes of the tributes that have fallen.
No, they had the faces, I thought, in the book.
No, it's just the eyes.
Was it just the eyes? I thought it was the faces too.
Yeah.
No, that's just too creepy.
And,
Well,
and like I remember her, and I feel like it was like they knew who killed them, so it was like certain ones would be like extra nasty to her, like the ones that like she killed, because like they knew that she killed them or whatever, but they were all nasty. Yeah,
I remember Clove was from District 1?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Clove came back as a mutt, and she was nasty.
So Peeta and Katniss had to run. Obviously, they made it to the cornucopia, and there they had to face the last tribute while all the mutts are surrounding. And oh my god, what's his name?
Kato.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wow,
Kato.
why can't I remember this?
Yeah, it's Kato, because it was Kato and Clove.
Yeah. So Kato, who's like the big, strong, you know, guy from District 1, and he fought them. You didn't, you know, it was nerve-wracking there, but they managed to kick him off the cornucopia, and the mutts dragged him inside the cornucopia. And just like the way she described like his whining, and like how they just sat there waiting and praying for him to just die.
Yeah,
you know, because
end up putting an arrow through his head or something.
Yeah, she finally like put him out of his misery, and like, you know, leaned over and shot an arrow to kill him. And then the game was over, because they had said like the rule, like, you know, two people from the same district could both win. Yeah, not so much. The lovely game makers decided, oh, that rule is now revoked. The last battle has begun. Go.
Yeah.
So like,
because it's more dramatic, you know. Now the two lovers have to like sacrifice. Fight to the death / sacrifice one of themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
To save the other one.
But Katniss said,
none of
no,
it.
no. Nope.
She found
said,
the
no.
nightshade berries, and she's like, "No, here, we'll just eat these."
Yep, poisonous berries that she had found.
nobody wins.
Yep. Yep. So they were going to sacrifice each other, and they stopped the
Oh,
game
that-
and allowed both of them to win.
I mean, to be fair, that really would fit the whole star-crossed lovers thing, really.
That's true.
It-
Little
it
Romeo
did.
and Juliet action going on.
Yep.
So, you finish the first book thinking, oh, happy ending. They both live, whatever. Woohoo. Yay. And then you get to the second book, and it's like, guess what? It's not all sunshine and rainbows, because now Katniss is in trouble with the government.
Yes, because they were furious because she did that. She outsmarted him, basically, is what she did. She outsmarted him.
And as a result, people kind of started realizing, like, you could stand up to the Capitol, which is like the government, and fight back. All these districts that had been treated like crap forever, now we're kind of wanting to step up and be like, we're not taking this anymore. And Katniss became that beacon that they had been almost waiting for.
Mm-hmm. Symbol of hope.
Yeah. And one thing we forgot to mention, which is very important throughout the series, is her friend from District 12, before she left, she was the mayor's daughter, gave her a Mockingjay pin that she could wear on her uniform for the games. And after the first Hunger Games, she became known as the Mockingjay. That's what everyone referred to her as the Mockingjay, which is a mix between a mockingbird and a blue jay.
Yes.
In case you want to know. So
Mockingjays can that's how they sent signals too.
yes,
Because,
during the war.
Yeah, because mockingjays can mimic any sound it hears.
Yep. So that's the synopsis of the first book. The movie, obviously, if you haven't seen it, but Katniss is played by Jennifer Lawrence, who I thought did an exceptional job.
She did. That wasn't that pretty much like one of her first movies that she did.
It wasn't.
no,
I mean, it was toward the
not really.
beginning
Of her
of like when
career.
she started getting popular. I think X-Men was before that, though.
I thought it was. Oh yeah. That you're right. Yeah, because she was
Okay.
already friends with Zoe Kravitz,
Mm-hmm. Right, and
and then she was in the movie with
with her father,
with her father. So
Lenny.
with Lenny. So
Lenny
Lenny
Kravitz,
Kravitz.
yes.
and they were already friends before they did the movie together. But yeah, I mean, basically, Hunger Games was the movie that really made Jennifer Lawrence popular because she'd already done a couple other movies. Actually, I think she got nominated for an Oscar before she did Hunger Games already. I think she was. Because there was another movie she did earlier that I never actually saw the movie, but I read the book that it was based off of, and I was like, wow, the movie must have been really intense because the book was already intense. So
Yeah.
But what I liked about the movie was it really did stick pretty close to the book. The mayor's daughter didn't make an appearance, but like she wasn't as an important character.
In the
Like she was someone that like you didn't necessarily need. She doesn't drive the story. So, that stuff is okay. And like they kind of added some things, but the things that they added were based off of what she would kind of be saying in the book about what she thinks people at home were watching, or what the announcers for the Hunger Games were saying. So it kind of made you feel like you were just a spectator watching the games. So I thought it was very well done. I wish more, movie, book to movie adaptations were like that, because I just think that they didn't take liberties. They went to the book and they kept to it pretty closely, I thought.
Yeah, I did appreciate that about it, because that's what I thought too, after, because I read the books and obviously watched the movies, and I was like, wow, this is pretty damn close. I mean, there's a few things, like you said, they might have added a few things in, or they took a few things out that really didn't need to be in the movies, which was fine. They weren't major plot points or anything like that, which was really nice. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also with just in general with the adaptation process, there has to be some compromises on certain things, like what we were saying before is like, certain details that don't really drive the story. Those oftentimes will be taken out. But also sometimes you have to take into consideration, well, what is actually logistically possible to even film.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yes, money is involved also.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because like one of the big things that was very clearly different is the fact that in the books it's all in Katniss's perspective. So we only get her limited view and limited understanding of what's going on, but at the same time, if you read it closely, you could piece together what's really going on, even if she doesn't necessarily understand, at least at the time, what's going on, which I always admire when when any author is able to do that, because that is that's just a demonstration of how excellent they are as a writer, that they can stay almost in character when they're writing from a first person perspective. But, at the same time, they don't necessarily treat you as the reader as like an idiot, where they have to spoon feed you everything. They let you kind of piece together what's going on.
So we're on to the second book
Yes.
/ movie
Catching
called
Fire.
Catching Fire. And it starts about 6 months after the end of the first book. And we find Katniss is now living in what is known as the Victor's Village with her family, along with Haymitch and Peeta. They all have their own homes in Victor's Village. There's only the three of them, which the houses are a lot nicer, better kept, because obviously now she's a victor of the Hunger Games. And she finds out that if she does not keep up the ruse that she's in love with Peeta, President Snow's going to kill everybody that she loves.
Yeah. Good old President Snow. Yeah, because not that she doesn't realize, but because of what she did at the end of the first Hunger Games, as we mentioned, with the poison berries and kind of, forcing the game maker's hands, she inspired a rebellion in a lot of the districts, which we had talked about before. She doesn't really realize that this is happening. So President Snow makes sure she knows, and they're about to go on a tour of all the districts. This is what victors do. They go and kind of like rub it in the faces of everybody. And they have to pretty much try and convince everyone that they are madly in love, and that's really it was a more of a thing of passion, not that she was trying to force their hand. It's this, she couldn't live without Peeta, and that's what they have to try and convince everybody, or else Snow will make sure she suffers.
But what has happened is Peeta has found out that Katniss really doesn't love him. He still loves her, but she doesn't love him. But because of what has happened with because what has happened due to them winning the games and President Snow's threats, he's willing to continue the ruse to keep Katniss safe, which has been his entire thing from the start. That's been his MO, is he wants to keep her safe and alive. So while they're going through the tour, through the districts, touring the districts, they also have to try to plan a wedding which is not something Katniss is real happy about doing, obviously. But then we get into the 75th annual Hunger Games, because in the first book it was the 74th Hunger Games. Now we're in the 75th Hunger Games, which is known as the Quarter Quell. And in this one, they don't pick brand new victors or brand new tributes. They take them from the old tributes, the old victors of the Hunger Games.
It's their equivalent of the All-Star Special.
Basically.
Pretty
But,
much, yeah.
And surprisingly enough, thanks to both Katniss and Peeta winning for District 12, every district has at least one male and one female victor to be drawn from. Obviously, Katniss is going no matter what. So they're having to draw between Haymitch, who won 24 years prior to this, or Peeta. And unfortunately, Katniss made a deal with Haymitch to, if Peeta's name was drawn, that he volunteers because she wants to keep Peeta safe and at home. Unfortunately, Haymitch's name was called, and Peeta volunteered as tribute.
Don't you just hate when that happens?
I know. I was like, but you knew it was coming.
Oh yeah.
Of course. It's too easy.
Exactly.
Although, just one minor point. Actually, Hamish's game was the previous Quarter Quell. He was in the 50th game.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, because
And that was with 24 tributes. Wasn't it? Wasn't that the one where they doubled the tributes?
yeah, they doubled it, so it's actually 48.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
yeah,
It's normally
because this kind of, I forget if it was in the second book or in the third one, but you get a little bit more of Haymitch's backstory, and it basically explains one of the reasons why he's a drunk. He's a total alcoholic because he just can't emotionally deal with not only what he had to do to survive the games, but also the fact that he basically watched, 23, 24 other kids get killed until Katniss and Peeta won. And that would undoubtedly make anybody start drinking. And also the Quarter Quell, the fact that he won the Quarter Quell last time is also the reason why he noticeably doesn't have any family or friends in the series. And because he did his own stunt in the games, and that didn't turn out well for him.
Yeah, poor Haymitch.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I just wanted to mention, so after the tour, before they do, they announced the new tributes or whatever, Katniss kind of figures out that all the work that she'd been doing during the tour to try and like calm down the rebellion didn't work. So thus eventually, like, you kind of feel that the reason why the Quarter Quell is from the past victors, which part of the bargain is if you win, you never have to be in the Hunger Games again, is because President Snow wants to punish Katniss. So they definitely allude to it more in the movie, but that's how I felt even when I was reading the book, that like, okay, this was so set up.
Yeah. You could just, as I was reading the books, I just like, oh, he set this up.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, on the other side of it, also, you kind of realize is that it kind of makes you, I don't know about you guys, but it kind of made me wonder exactly, does Snow or anyone in the Capitol that's in power really, like, do any of these people really understand why, the districts, like, especially the poorer districts in particular, why they resent the Capitol so much? Because realistically, okay, granted, what Katniss did does show kind of like symbolically at least shows somebody who's willing to stand up against the rules of the Capitol. But at the same time, it's like, it's actually more than just her, really. It's just the fact that as they watch what she goes through in the first Hunger Games, I think the audience kind of realized, that she's just a visual example of how completely messed up everything is, and we shouldn't sit here and just take it anymore. So, I wouldn't be surprised if some of this rebellion that was happening, that they hint at in the books, but you see more in the movies. I personally think like that was going to be inevitable, really, because at some point people are just going to get really angry and fed up with everything, and she may have kind of motivated people to like actively do something, but it's just a matter of time, really. And the fact that Snow seems to think for some reason that her, continuing this charade that she's in love with Peeta was actually going to do anything is kind of stupid, because it just shows that they don't really understand why people resent them.
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't get political on this channel. We try not to, especially with what we talk about. But it actually, right now kind of has a lot of similarities to things that are happening in real life in places. I mean, obviously, no, we're not sacrificing 23 kids every year in a gladiatorial style game, but it's kind of, especially recently, things that have been happening. It's just like you can see it's kind, there's a parallel in a way,
Right, which is the intention of Suzanne Collins. So
exactly, because she was how she decided that or I shouldn't say how she decided to come up with the premise of the books is back from during the Iraq War. She was seeing images of the Iraq War and then gladiatorial games to kind of came together. And
right, because I think she indicated in interviews that she was also kind of inspired to just the concept of having these games basically came from reality shows like Survivor, really. Which was extremely popular I mean, Survivor's still on TV, but it was especially popular at the around the time the books originally got published. And just the whole concept of using these like exciting TV show games type of thing be a distraction for people to what is really going on in the world or what's going on around them, was something that she just, couldn't stop thinking about as she's like watching, TV at the time. And the fact that it's very similar to ancient Rome, because, you see a lot of references to Rome, Latin, Roman names throughout the book series. I mean, just the name of the country, Panem, comes from Panem at circuses, I think it's called, which is to, distract people with, entertainment and, free food or whatever, so they don't have to realize that they're actually angry at their emperor or whatever. Which is a running theme in Hunger Games. So it all fits. It all works. There's an explanation.
So, Mary, did you want to continue?
Sure. So now we're into the Quarter Quell. We're into the Hunger Game, the actual arena, and Peeta and Katniss have teamed up with several other victors from several different districts. Johanna Mason is one from District 12, and that was Finnick O'Dare also District 12? Or was
No,
he
4.
He was District 4?
Yep.
And Johanna was District 7.
Yes, District 7. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm like half dead today.
We're here for you.
Yes.
If you need me to help, I will.
I think you're gonna have to
Okay.
take over because I'm
I
like
got you.
confused as all hell right now.
All right. So when they go, to go to training and stuff like that, Haymitch pretty much tells Peeta and Katniss to team up with some other tributes. And Katniss is not really for that. She doesn't trust anybody. They go into the arena. Going into the games, she's partnered obviously with Peeta, and they're with Finnick, who's from District 4, and Finnick's partner from District 4. Who Madge was actually one that Katniss wanted to work with, but so Madge is an elderly woman, so they're together, and as she kind of starts trusting Finnick after Finnick saves Peeta's life, because Peeta hit the they made it all the way to like the border of the arena, and he hit the force field and he died basically, and Finnick did CPR and brought him back to life. So that's where Katniss kind of started trusting him, but it wasn't 100%.
Right.
They did eventually meet up with Johanna and the two other
From District 3, BT and Wirus.
Yep. And who are the other two that Katniss wanted to join with. And
Yes.
so it's all of them together. They kind of figure out what the arena is. It turns out to be a big clock. But they figure out that at the 12 o'clock, quote unquote, spot, that lightning strikes this big giant tree. So Beatty has this plan. He has this huge thing of wire, and they're going to run the wire from the tree down into the water in hopes to electrocute everyone, all the other tributes. What Katniss doesn't know, and you find out, because then there's like a big attack. They have Katniss and Peeta separated, and Katniss is with Joanna. They're bringing the wire down to the water. They get attacked. Joanna actually attacks Katniss. So Katniss is like, "Oh my God, like they're turning on us. I knew it, blah, blah, blah." She runs back to try and find Peeta, can't find Peeta, and she winds up taking poor Beatty electrocutes himself by accident, and Katniss winds up taking the wire, putting it on a arrow, and shooting it up at the arena, and as the lightning struck, and it actually blew up the entire arena. And Katniss is saved, and like two others are saved. Peeta, unfortunately, is not. He's still in the arena. And when Katniss comes to, she's on the jet, and she finds out that it was all a big plan to get her out, and they're going to District 13, and she's now part of the rebel forces. Gale is there, and basically she finds out poor Peeta and Joanna were left and were taken. They were arrested. The game maker, who's Plutar Heavensby, is actually part of the rebel forces. He wanted to be game maker to have this whole thing happen to get Katniss out of there. And at the end, the last thing that Katniss finds out is that, unfortunately, District 12, her home, once she blew up the arena, District 12 was bombed and destroyed. Okay, so we'll jump right into the last book, which is Mockingjay. For those who don't know, the last book was actually split into two different movies. But pretty much, Katniss is in District 13. She's having a really hard time kind of recovering from the last Hunger Games. But they're trying to get her to become their spokesperson, their leader, to be that, rebel that everyone can go to, because everyone knows who she is. So in order to reach out to the other districts, they want her to be their quote unquote Mockingjay. And she at first didn't want to do it, but after going to District 12 and seeing the destruction and going to the, talking to or seeing the District 12 survivors, her mother survived, her sister survived. She decides, okay, she'll do it, but only if she gets immunity for Peeta, Joanna, and anyone else from who has been in the Hunger Games that were arrested. So that was the contingency. It was approved. Plus, she said she wanted to kill President Snow once they get the chance. So she starts going out. She has a whole crew with her. She starts going out to different districts to show kind of what's going on. Meanwhile, the Capitol is showing video of Peeta, who is being brainwashed to say all these terrible, to try and stop the rebellion. So while Katniss is pushing the rebellion, Peeta is stopping the rebellion. So everyone at District 13 now hates Peeta. But Katniss is going out and shooting all different videos to show to the districts. She gets shot at one point, but survives. They eventually do go out and rescue Peeta, Joanna, and everyone else. And when they get Peeta back, it turns out that he has been brainwashed, and he tries to kill Katniss. He chokes her. He tries to choke her to death. And so, the second movie / the second half of the book, Katniss is trying to recover basically from being strangled to death. And she goes out with her team again and, again, continues to shoot different things. The Capitol decides to attack District 13. I think that it was actually earlier. It was in the first half of the book, so I apologize. I'm backtracking. But they're going after District 13. They're bombing, and they're trying to come up with after the bombing, kind of tell everyone what happened and that District 13's okay and that everyone's fine. And Katniss almost has like a panic attack. She can't do it. So Finnick actually steps up and decides to tell everybody that, like, Snow, what a bad person he is, how he's had so many people killed, and that he always smells of roses. White roses are like his thing, and it turns out it's because he poisons people, but he also takes some of the poison, and it causes his mouth to bleed. So in order to make him not smell like blood, he always has a rose. Little fun fact for you. But anyway, so Katniss kind of becomes part of this squad that will go out into the field, into the districts, specifically the Capitol, because now the rebellion has reached the Capitol, and they're slowly fighting their way in. So they said Katniss can go out with her team, but they have to stay well behind everybody, let the fighting happen, and then they can go in after. And it's almost like an obstacle course. It's like a big Hunger Games where, if they move down the wrong street, what's called like a pod will happen, and some sort of trauma will occur. So, and it could kill you. So throughout it, many of them unfortunately die. Finnick, my dear Finnick, does die from mutts. And it's very sad. Meanwhile, Coin, who's in charge of District 13, sends Peeta out to join their squad, and Katniss thinks it's because Coin doesn't like her, and that Peeta's basically been sent to kill her because he's still not right in the head because he was brainwashed. So he doesn't know what's real, what's not. Kind of reminds me of someone else that that we watch in movies and, read about in fanfics, but whatever.
I was wondering when he was going to get brought up in this conversation.
Just saying.
I don't think we can have a conversation without bringing that up.
Yeah. But so pretty much they do eventually make it, some of them make it all the way to the end. And everyone from the Capitol, like the rich and stuff, are trying to get to the president's mansion to basically get some protection and all that. And Katniss and Gale are there, and someone drops bombs. It looks like it's like a capital jet drops bombs on people, and Katniss is up there, and a lot of District 13 like nurses and stuff show up, and Katniss sees her sister Primrose, who had become like a nurse in District 13, and with that more bombs exploded, and unfortunately Primrose, which is the only reason why Katniss is in the mess that she's in, is to protect her sister, and her sister gets killed.
Yes.
And it destroys Katniss. And so when she wakes up, she finds out, yes, the rebels have won. Snow, basically is waiting to get executed. And they have like a big meeting with all the remaining victors. And Coin decides that she wants to have an honorary Hunger Games with the Capitol's children. And Katniss plays the part of like, yes, like she'll do it, but she knows it's wrong. It's like nothing's changed. Now it's just the rebels are going to be in control, but it's still going to be the same outcome. So when she goes to kill Snow, she kills Coin instead. Snow winds up dying anyway because he was dying. And I think that's why one of the reasons why Katniss didn't kill him also is because he was dying anyway. So Katniss gets like arrested, but they feel that she was just not mentally well, and that's why she killed Coin. So she was able to go home to District 12. She no longer talks to Gale because Gale had brought up the situation that happened that killed her sister. Gale had brought up previously, like he would do that, because sometimes you have to kill your own in order to win. And so it was kind of like his plan. He didn't know it was going to happen, but it was his plan that Coin used to kill her sister. So she no longer talks to Gale, and then it ends with basically Katniss and Peeta are married and they have children and are happily ever after. The end.
The only thing I dislike about the entire series is the ending of it.
Yeah, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
Yeah, well, it's not so much. I mean, it hurt that Prim was killed, but it was the epilogue where they have children, because she swore up and down that she would never bring children into that world.
Well, I think she did it because she knew there would never be a Hunger Games again.
Yeah, but it's at the time it just seemed like it was such a backtrack of who she was.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think it's because like she didn't want to bring children in because of the Hunger Games. Once she killed Coin and she knew the Hunger Games were never going to happen again, she felt, I guess, compelled, like, okay, she could finally have kids. So apparently, like, if I recall,
that's
Peeta
pretty
had been
much what
wanting
is.
it. She didn't want it. It took a long time for her to agree to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, it's kind of the opposite. Like, I was fine with the ending because the thing is that, like you were just saying, her issue was she just felt like, I don't want to bring kids into this world if they're just going to be subjected to the Hunger Games. And the fact that she even agrees to actually have kids, it's basically implied that they don't go through things like the Hunger Games again, just under a new, rather than like restarting the Hunger Games just with a different, regime. It's implied that they got rid of them for good and that kids are not going to be subjected to that again. But also like the other thing I the thing that made me not mind the ending so much is the fact that, like, even though it does come across as like, oh, this is like happily ever after, the thing is that like there's like this subtle feeling that it's not completely happily ever after either, because they don't outrightly say it, but they pretty much tell you throughout the series that, all these people have PTSD and they have to somehow live with it and try to move on with their lives as best as they can. And if things are finally, if the world they're living in is getting better, then, the obvious sign of it is that you actually get married and you have kids, when your fear was like, I don't want kids to be subjected to all this crap. And, but now, like, things are better, so I feel like I can do it. I can have a family, I can have kids, I can create another generation that will hopefully not have to fear like this anymore. So for me, I was okay with it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's yeah, that's how like I took it, but I do kind of understand, your whole thing, but I think what you have to realize is like the epilogue is actually several years later. It's not like right after, and I think that's kind of hard sometimes to think about when like you're reading, but it did take a while for him to persuade her, even though she knew everything was cool. But I mean, poor Katniss and Peeta, honestly, the two of them. Peeta lost his entire family when District 12 got destroyed. Katniss lost so many people that she loved. Her mother survived, but she stayed. She didn't move back to District 12. She no longer talks to Gale, who was like her best friend and the guy that she actually loved. Anyone else that she cared about or whatever pretty much died. Especially her sister, who, again, this whole thing was about protecting her sister. Her sister was the one thing that she loved above all others, and she was killed. And it's sad. It really is a sad story. Like, even though it's a quote unquote happy ending, it's a sad, sad story.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
And, yeah, and in a way it does add the realism that, that even though some great things do happen, for her and for Peeta, at the end, at the same time, like I said earlier, they still have to live with all of their experiences and try to move on, try to continue with their lives as best as they can. And, that's, that's the ending. That's how, the story ends for them, so.
Yeah. And then we actually found out today there is a fourth
Prequel.
book that's a prequel. It came out May of 2020 that none of us have read, but I am actually going to go look for it and try and read it. So there you go.
Same.
But it's about it's the story of the Dark Days, the one thing that we don't really know 100% like what happened. So sounds like you'll get to know why the Hunger Games began in the first place.
Oh my God, they're already. And here's another fact. They're actually getting ready to make a film adaptation of this book. Expected to be released in either late 2023 or early 2024. And it is set in the universe of the Hunger Games. The book, I'm just going to read just a smidge of it, the first couple sentences here of the plot. The book follows Coriolanus Snow, who is chosen to mentor a tribute in the upcoming 10th Hunger Games. He is assigned the District 12 tribute. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I want to actually read the book. I was just kind of like looking a little bit at the quote unquote plot on Wikipedia.
Right.
But that's all I'm saying is that's all that's it. I can't believe they're doing it already.
Well, money talks.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, so the films, again, I really thought all three or four, I should say, movies did a pretty good job at keeping with the books. Like I mentioned before, the last book was split into two movies, which I wasn't sure how that was going to work because the book isn't like ridiculously huge, but honestly, where they split it worked really well. I thought so.
The most interesting thing I thought was the fact that, what was the inspiration? Even the references to, ancient Rome, which fits the which fits the theme. I mean, you have names like Coriolanus, which is famously a character from, Shakespeare, and that was set in like ancient Roman times. You have like, the one of the, some of the tributes are named like Cato. That's a, famous Roman politician, senator, things like that. I mean, those little details are subtle, but it's very effective world building. So that I appreciate. Okay, so I guess before we close out, just a reminder to everyone. We have an email address for you to send in comments, suggestions, whatever feedback you may have for this episode and our previous episodes. You can email us at 3fatesdecide@gmail.com. That's basically the name of our podcast, all in one word. 3 is spelt out. And we also have an Instagram account. Again, it's 3fatesdecide is the username. I also put links in the show description, the episode descriptions on our podcast page. So, yeah. Now you have ways to contact us and let us know what you think.
Check us out.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Catch us next time.
And see what we're going to talk about.
Because the 3 fates decide.